At the quiet funeral, a German shepherd suddenly leaped toward the baby's coffin, barking uncontrollably. Guests gasped, thinking the dog had lost its mind, until the lid creaked open. What they saw inside left everyone frozen in shock, and the truth behind the barking would change their lives forever. A chilling wind rustled the tall grass around the gravestones, carrying with it the hushed whispers of grief. At the center of it all rested a small white coffin, delicate and pure, almost too small to bear the weight of the sorrow it carried. That a young couple stood nearby, clutching each other's hands as though letting go would shatter what little strength they had left. Their faces were pale, etched with the kind of pain only parents could know, the loss of a child far too soon. Friends and relatives lingered behind them, offering silent support, their hearts heavy with disbelief. Near the coffin sat Max, the family's loyal German shepherd. His ears twitched nervously, and his brown eyes darted between the mourners and the small casket. He seemed to understand that something was terribly wrong, his usual energy replaced by a tense stillness. Occasionally, he let out a soft whine, barely audible over the murmur of the priest's prayers. No one paid much attention, thinking he was simply mourning alongside the family, unaware of what he was about to reveal. That as the priest's voice droned softly through the misty air, Max began to fidget. His ears perked, and a low growl rumbled from his throat, catching the attention of a few mourners. At first, they thought it was just the dog's grief manifesting, but then his behavior shifted. He pulled against his leash, claws scraping the damp earth, eyes locked on the small white coffin as if trying to communicate something urgent. The father tightened his grip on the leash, whispering, "Max, calm down, boy." But Max refused. His growl grew louder, transforming into sharp barks that echoed across the cemetery. The sudden noise startled the crowd, causing the priest to pause mid-sentence. All eyes turned to the German shepherd, who was now lunging toward the coffin, his muscles straining with desperation. The mother gasped, clutching her husband's arm. "Why is he acting like that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. That Max's barks were no longer just noise. They were insistent, almost pleading. He scratched at the coffin's edge, his nails clicking against the polished wood. His tail was rigid, his body tense, and his eyes wild with urgency. He let out a howl that sent chills through the mourners, a sound filled with both fear and determination. "Is he sensing something?" one of the relatives murmured. A few people stepped back nervously, while others leaned closer, curiosity overtaking fear. Something about Max's behavior didn't feel like mourning. It felt like a warning, a desperate attempt to tell them that something inside the coffin wasn't as it seemed. Max's frantic barking grew louder, echoing across the silent graveyard. Finally, the father couldn't take it anymore. "Something's wrong," he said, his voice breaking. He glanced at the priest, then at the funeral director, who hesitated before slowly nodding. With trembling hands, the father stepped forward and unlatched the lid of the small white coffin. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the hinge creaked open. Everyone held their breath, expecting only the lifeless stillness of tragedy. But what they saw made their hearts stop. The baby's tiny hand twitched. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, the mother screamed, "She's alive!" She rushed forward, nearly collapsing to her knees. The little girl's chest rose with a faint, shallow breath, her lips pale but moving. Max immediately stopped barking and began whining softly, pressing his nose against the baby as if urging everyone to act faster. Chaos erupted. Someone fumbled for their phone to call an ambulance, while another tore off their jacket to wrap the fragile infant. The funeral director, pale as a ghost, kept muttering, "This can't be, this can't be." The paramedics arrived within minutes, alerted by the frantic call. They checked the baby's pulse and confirmed what everyone now knew. She had been alive, but in a state of near hypothermia and shock, mistaken for lifelessness. The baby let out a weak cry. The cemetery, once filled with sorrow, now rang with disbelief and relief. Max sat beside the family, his tail wagging slowly, his job done. He had refused to let them bury the truth. In that moment, the mourners realized something profound. If not for the loyal German shepherd's unyielding instinct, the baby would have been lost forever. The ambulance siren wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. The baby's mother clutched her child to her chest, tears streaming down her face. She whispered, "Hold on, sweetheart, just hold on," as if her voice alone could keep the tiny heart beating. Max trotted beside her, refusing to leave the baby's side. His sharp eyes never wavered, and his ears twitched at every sound. It was as if he knew the battle wasn't over yet. The paramedics quickly took over, placing the baby in a small incubator and attaching monitors. Her breathing was faint but steady enough to give hope. The family piled into the ambulance, with Max leaping in after them. No one dared to stop him. The loyal German shepherd curled up near the stretcher, his gaze fixed on the baby, his body trembling with quiet whines. As the ambulance raced down the road, the doctor explained, "She suffered a rare episode that mimicked death, extreme hypothermia combined with a faint pulse. Without immediate care, she would have slipped away completely." The parents held each other, shuddering at the thought of how close they had come to burying their daughter alive. Max rested his head on the edge of the stretcher, his eyes full of determination. It was as if he refused to relax until he knew the baby was truly safe. When the hospital finally came into view, the family felt a spark of hope ignite in their hearts. The baby lay in a warm incubator, tiny chest rising and falling with each fragile breath. Her parents clung to each other, eyes locked on the clear glass enclosure, afraid to blink. They had lived through the most terrifying hours of their lives. Max sat faithfully by the bed, his head resting on his paws, but his amber eyes never left the baby. Nurses passing by couldn't help but stop and stare. "I've never seen a dog so protective," one whispered. The doctor smiled softly. "He saved her life. He knew before any of us did." As dawn broke, the baby stirred, letting out a faint, sweet cry. It was the sound everyone had been praying for. The mother gasped, her hands flying to her mouth, while the father rushed forward, his own eyes filling with tears. The doctor checked the monitors, nodding. "She's responding well. The worst is over." Relief washed over the room like a wave. Max's ears perked up at the baby's cry, and he gave a soft whine, wagging his tail slowly as if he, too, knew the nightmare had passed. And a nurse opened the incubator to let the parents touch their daughter. They reached in with trembling hands, whispering promises of love and protection. All the while, Max inched closer, pressing his warm fur against their legs, as if sealing the family's reunion, where laughter filled the air. The baby, now stronger and healthier, lay in her mother's arms wrapped in a soft pink blanket. Her tiny fingers reached out, grabbing at the fur of her loyal protector, Max, who sat proudly at her side. His tail thumped gently against the grass, eyes glowing with warmth and contentment. Neighbors and friends often stopped by to see the miracle baby and meet the German shepherd everyone in town now called a hero. Some brought treats, others snapped photos, but Max seemed uninterested in the attention. His focus was always on his family, especially the little girl whose life he had saved. One evening, the father sat on the porch, looking at Max with a mixture of awe and gratitude. "I don't know how to ever repay you, buddy," he whispered. Max wagged his tail, as if to say that he didn't need anything but their love. The mother leaned against her husband, smiling through tears. "He's more than a dog. He's an angel in fur."